Thank you. I'm so excited to be here this morning. I'm really pleased to be speaking with you today because I love to speak, but mostly because you are my people and I am yours. It's a rare and beautiful thing for people to come together as we do each Sunday and in the other activities that we do to celebrate our individuality, to be in the company of people who want to think deeply and who care about our personal, spiritual, and collective growth, and to work together, to learn and to grow, so that we will all be successful in healing and transforming everyday conditions in order to transform our lives together. You are my community, where I can be the best of who I am, while being accepted for where I've gotten to so far, where I am encouraged to challenge myself to learn and to grow. This is a community where I am supported and loved. You are my community, where I can express the great desire I have to help others be all that they can be, and to encourage each of us to feel empowered to define and to live lives of joy and meaning. And I know that many of you in this room have similar experiences of this community. This is a community you and I have chosen because we are not satisfied with the status quo in our own lives or in the world. We seek to know more about spirit, spiritual living, and ourselves. We are here to create friendships, to learn, to play, to grow, to create together, and to make powerful and lasting change happen. And because we are here at this center, we are part of a planetary movement of Centers for Spiritual Living, whose mission is to bring this message of personal empowerment, spiritual growth, spiritual unity to 100 million people, and in so doing, heal the planet and the human race and create a world that works for everyone. How great are we? Newcomers, if you're here for the first time or you've only been here a couple of times and not too sure, know that this is a community that welcomes you, not in a stalkerish or evangelical kind of way, but in the best sense of supporting you and accepting you wherever you are in your spiritual journey. You are one of us if you choose to be. We are a healthy and beautiful community, and community is my topic today. For the newsletter, I describe today's topic this way. As spiritual human beings, we long to know ourselves, and we yearn to be part of something greater. Self-contemplation, together with participating in community, allows us to discover our highest self and to live our greatest expression. So join me today as we explore the potential, the joy, the power of living in community. So let's begin by defining community. Ooh, turn the unit on. So definition of community. So I Googled it, of course. It yielded 594 million results in 0.25 seconds, which tells you my computer's a little slow. And it's so fascinating, isn't it, to see the diversity on the internet. Wow, 594 million ways to talk about community. And it's kind of a hot button these days. Advertisers are trying to figure out how to enroll us in their community of their product. We're all about communities and workplaces. People are coming together in churches and in spiritual groups to find that sense of community and belonging. So the definitions I found included a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. So we're Canadian, we're Calgarian. The people of a district or country, considered collectively, especially in the context of social values and responsibilities, society. And the one that I'm going to concentrate more on today is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. And I'm going to be emphasizing that last definition because I believe a sense of community goes far beyond any geographical affiliation or formal definition. And perhaps in this age we live in of such great mobility, physically and in cyber land, we're moving around all the time. We're forming and reforming communities with the phenomenon of social media, which we've only just begun to kind of, get a good picture of. I think we're reforming, disbanding communities all the time. And maybe we're actually redefining community itself. So I'm going to stay with this kind of broad definition. So in this talk, I'm going to highlight the value of community. I'm going to talk about the mutually beneficial relationship of the individual and the community. And I'm going to ask you to think about your community involvement now and going forward. I attended a concert Friday night. I know at least a few of you. Who was at the Heather Bishop, Connie Calder concert on Friday night? Yeah. Fantastic concert. And during this concert, I had an insight into the dimension of community as a feeling of fellowship with others. Because partway through the evening, I realized that I was experiencing a joyful, intense, profound, though it was temporary, sense of community. The concert featured Heather Bishop and Connie Calder, and the songs and stories of these accomplished, very professional, very well-seasoned singer-songwriters brought those of us in the audience together very quickly and somehow quite intimately. These women were so good at creating this experience, it was almost as good as being at an Amy Bishop concert. At one point, Connie Calder was describing the experience of a young woman attending a dance in a community hall in a small town. It could have been anywhere in Alberta, Saskatchewan, or on the prairies. She and her band, which was her husband and her son, which was really lovely to see the three of them playing together, and maybe a whole other topic. But they played a few lines of this song. I have to remember the song. How many people connected with the song? They were a little livelier on Friday night. People kind of erupted. They started laughing and applauding. And it brought us all together. Now, those of you who have not been to a dance in a small town hall in Western Canada for sure, maybe Eastern Canada, ask us at the break or after we're done the service, ask somebody who looks, about my age, or ask me about the chicken song. So in bringing forth the things that they brought forth in that concert, making jokes and using humor about life and how life plays out, using things like the chicken song, this shared experiences, they brought us all together. And because we are human beings, and because we are spiritual human beings, we are naturally built for coming together, for sharing. We want to share our experiences. I felt so at home during this event as I applauded and laughed with my fellow audience members, exchanging smiles with strangers. I felt like I was really a part of this community of music lovers, of human beings, sharing the joy of being alive and being together. And our being together enriched the music. We all could have been at home listening to Connie Calder on our iPods, and we would have had a very different experience. An experience we may want to have, but a very different one. But our brief gathering as a community enlivened the performers and brought out the best in them. And I think it made each of us, in some way, happier, more joyful, better equipped to get out there and continue creating lives of joy and meaning and giving the best of who we are. I'm clear that community is a shared experience, casual and temporary, or more formal and lasting. It is profound and important. And community is nothing new to us. We're all part of communities. often more permanent and formal. We all started with a community called a family. Then came to know we were part of a neighborhood. Maybe we belonged to a community association. Then a school. We may have belonged to a church. Maybe we played on a team or were part of a band. Then we became part of a workplace. Then we may have formed another family. Ultimately, we may all participate in the community in a senior center. Just me? I'm not going to be the only one there? So we're social creatures, aren't we? And we depend on one another. We've developed a society that depends on this. And I would say in North America, we're not even as good at community as a lot of other cultures are. My students, when I teach at SAIT or at Bow Valley College, my students many of them come from cultures that are really even much more deeply entrenched in community. They really understand the idea of individuality and interdependence. So I want to highlight a couple of communities that most of us have been part of that illustrate the benefits and the joys of community. So I have an example of a really fantastic community that I was a part of for a number of years. It was a group of people who, while I spent time with them, and for decades as a group, spent many days together accomplishing work that benefited others. This community was spread all around the province. Members of the community became very close. They shared meals together, they exchanged gifts, they honored one another's lives. Families, births, deaths, and life passages like graduations were all celebrated. We cried together and we helped one another. Many very close friendships formed that are still strong. This might sound like a church community or almost like a family. However, it was actually a workplace team or community at TransAlta Utilities. It was called the Billing and Collections Department. Yeah, pretty inventive. But the members of that community did so much more than send out bills to collect money to keep the lights on in Alberta. And I think this is more typical of workplace communities than we might think. There are many wonderful examples all around the city and all around the country and the world of kind and caring workplace communities, and I hope that you are experiencing this. How many of you have a workplace community that is a joyful place to be, where you support one another and life is good? So fewer hands than I would hope went up. Either the rest of you are shy or there's work to be done. But long ago, somewhere along the way in my career, about many years ago, I decided that the business community is just a place for us to get together, play around a little, have some fun with each other, make ourselves feel useful, and get some work done. And when I teach my students, actually, I teach management students sometimes, and I teach them that, or I tell them that business is all about building relationships and getting work done. Right? Two things. And if you're missing the building relationship piece, I encourage you to think about how could you do more of that. So we have temporary communities of shared interests, like the concert. We participate in communities in our workplaces. And I want to give you another example of community I want to highlight that's a kind of a broad societal one. So the whole field of education is an example of a community that creates great benefit, and it requires the participation of many, many individuals in many roles. So, and this is a field I've remained close to in my role as a teacher and now as a faculty developer. So think of the numbers of people required to accomplish the essential work that the education community delivers to members of society. It requires political leaders, administration, teachers, students, parents, school board members, office staff, bus drivers, cleaning staff, volunteers, and I've likely missed some rules. So I want to tell you a short story that illustrates the power of this community of education working together. I earned a master's in education at the University of Calgary in 2010. So I went to my convocation, and we were lined up in the Olympic Oval. So there were lots of us. Education students, both bachelor's and master's education, all lined up, so like there were hundreds of us. And there were volunteers there. Actually, most of them were paid employees, but there were people there handing out our diplomas. They were making sure we had caps and gowns and that we were in the right order. So we're all lined up in exactly the order we'd be called up in. So So we're all lined up, we're all ready to go. And as we're ready to walk out, we start to move, and all the people who had been helping us stood up and gave us a standing ovation. And it always chokes me up a little whenever I think of that, because it was so profound to me how many people gave their time, their expertise, their attention, their love, so that those of us in that group could get that education. The power of what we can do collectively is so profound, so important, and every one of those people standing up applauding was essential to this experience for each of us. And so I'm crying away, I'm all choked up about this, and the lady beside me is crying away. So the two of us are having a good cry on our way into the chair. We haven't even started yet. So we sit down, and the woman sitting next to me was an Aboriginal woman. And at one point she nudged me a little bit. She pointed me to look off to the side. And there was a girl standing there, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She's standing up in the crowd and she's taking a photo. And this woman said to me, "That's my granddaughter. And it is so important to me that she be here to see me get this degree." And I thought, this woman is from a community that in many ways has been marginalized, but it's a community within this community of education. And somehow the education field managed to encompass her and envelop her and make her welcome so that she could have this experience. Actually, the Aboriginal community in Canada, many of the leaders call education the new buffalo. That it will be what brings the Aboriginal community into its next phase of growth and renewal. So I'm just profoundly impressed with the power and the value of community. So in education, as in many communities, it requires diverse contributions by many good-hearted people to produce results. And at their best, communities like this transform lives and worlds. So it seems community is not only desirable for our sense of belonging, for enriching our lives, but communities are also essential for all of us to survive and grow and prosper as people, as a society. And at their best, communities offer equal benefits to the members of the community and to the community itself. So I talked about 3 types of communities: a temporary community of people with a shared interest, a workplace community, and a societal community. So I want to get a little bit more up close and personal now and ask you what communities you are part of and how you choose to participate. So take a moment to think of a community you are part of. Maybe a large or small community. Is it a community primarily for pleasure, like a knitting circle or a singing group? Is it business-oriented, like a board of trustees? Does it involve your family, or is it your own pursuit? Is your community healthy and functioning effectively, or is it filled with conflict or challenges? So just think for a moment about one community that you're engaged in, involved in. Most people have a community in mind. Show of hands. Thank you. So now, think of your participation up until now in this community. What role do you play in the community you're thinking of? Are you part of the healthiness or part of the problem? How does your contribution make a difference in this community? Would you be missed if you left? What commitment does it require of you? Are you tired and resentful, or do you feel satisfied and happy with your participation? Do you feel rewarded? What benefits do you receive? In other words, is your participation in this community a healthy one that blesses you and benefits the community? Now, if you feel comfortable, I'm just going to ask a couple more questions. If you feel comfortable, raise your hand. If you don't, that's fine. So who is experiencing the benefits, the mutual benefits of community participation? Oh, great, lots of hands. Who is part of a community that's not so healthy or satisfying? Thank you. Who wants to do more with community than they've been doing? Thank you. So if you're not satisfied, I have a few ideas for you to improve your present experience of community. And even if you are pretty happy with your community contribution so far, if you're like me, even when I'm pretty satisfied, I like to take stock every once in a while and look for ways to make what is good even better. So how can you make the most of the communities you are part of or want to be part of? How can you achieve the benefits of participating in a mutual give and take, where you have the opportunity to give and to grow, and also have the community benefit from your contribution? I have a few ideas, which are actually mostly questions for you to ask yourself to see if you are satisfied with your present level of involvement and to help you create more powerful results and more joyful results. I'm realizing as I'm talking, this talk sounds kind of pretty serious. But I really, a lot of my really delightful experiences of living have come in community. You know, the community of the band is a joyful expression. This community is one that's really of joy and a lot of laughter and a lot of fun. So, some ideas for creating even greater effect with your involvement in the community. Begin where you are. Ask yourself, what are the gifts I want to give? Sometimes we participate in communities because we think we should. Somebody has to do it. So I encourage you to, if you are in a community like that and you don't want to get out of that community, you want to stay in there, think about how can you give your gifts within that. And communities that you are not part of yet, what are the gifts you want to give that are in you, that want to be expressed? And at this point you have no real outlet for them. There's things we can do in a solitary way that are very satisfying, but there are many things that require us to be with others, to see the impact that we have, to let in, to have that mutual exchange of energy and of living life. It's kind of a paradox that these days a lot of people are searching for who they are, and they want to find their calling. And they're reading books and listening to tapes and listening to speakers and searching for their calling. And I don't want to be a little bit sarcastic with that, but I don't mean to minimize it. That is valuable and important. Self-contemplation is important. However, that's only good as long as we don't get stuck and make finding our calling a selfish or a pursuit that's only about ourselves. Often we find our gifts when we start a if we just get started in a community. We may be surprised at the value and the profound nature of what we have to offer. Often we discover our calling after we begin giving our gifts, our time and our talent. Second one is find a way to do some of that, number one, with other people in a community. So what are the gifts you want to give? What's the community that would be fun to give that in? Who would appreciate that? Where would it be most valued and valuable? Number three, give your best and be willing to receive the best. I think this idea of receiving is really key. I'm not an advocate of being in servitude and in the sacrifice